What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Site Visit. We are headed to a brand new project that we are working on with Steve Teak, an architect out of Utah. He actually flew in a couple weeks ago, met with myself, the family, who is super excited, as well as Cassie Gernon, who is going to be the interior designer on this project. We all jumped on site and we started talking about the proposed home. We're actually pretty far along with the schematic design of this house, so we had the opportunity to not only walk the site but stake out where the future home is going to be and just get everyone really excited about what we will be building. This is going to be their forever home, so we are being really intentional with our decision making, and not only from design but from a construction standpoint. We want to make sure that we're thinking everything through to the fullest extent, and getting everyone on site is the perfect way to do that. So the existing home is actually going to be demolished. We're going to do our best to recycle as much of that material as we can. You know, there's opportunity to salvage some of that stuff but more or less that home is going to be taken down. We also had a couple big trees that we were hoping to save, but unfortunately due to the health, we actually had those removed. But let's hop on site and talk about the trees that we will be saving and how we're going to protect them during construction. We are in beautiful Needham at a brand new project, and we just got out of a meeting with our tree guy, and I want to talk about what we're doing on this site because we have some really, really beautiful trees, especially this one behind us. This is actually a sweet gum. Speaking with the tree guys, they had informed me that you would never see a tree or a sweet gum this big in this good of health. Behind us here, we have actually a stump over there, as well as a massive stump over here. That thing's got to be at least 48 inches across. And unfortunately, this was actually one that we wanted to save early on, but two reasons. The health of it actually wasn't that great, as well as the position of it with the future home. We also have one on the side here. If you look back there, there's another stump. That was one that we wanted to save. Same thing, it actually had, I believe they called it cankers, on the tree that basically alluded to the fact that it would take a lot of work to get the health back up to where it needed to be and just wasn't worth it. So we ended up keeping the two King Crimson maples, which are on the left and the right of me, on the far ends of the property, and this beautiful sweet gum right in the middle of the property. King Crimson Red, it's a maple tree, and we are actually going to be putting the driveway to the future home on the right side of that tree. So what's really important is, with all of these trees, we need to make sure that we are not impacting the root system. We're not disturbing the tree itself. We want these trees to not only last through construction, but last for a really, really long time. This tree is extremely old and extremely healthy. We want it to continue to live here. And not only that, but from the curb appeal and just for what this streetscape looks like, it's going to help further make this house look like it's always been here, which is always our intent. We're going to be air spading the trees. What air spading means is they're going to come in with, essentially high pressured air and expose the root system. The reason that we're going to do that is so we can navigate and find out where the roots are headed, but we can also make a clean cut on any of the roots in the area that might be impacted by the excavation. The existing home is right here. This home is going to be torn down, and the new home is actually pretty much in the same spot, but it gets a little bit closer to this tree because this stoop, the future facade of the home, is right about here. Now, why that's important is that means we're going to be excavating in this area. And we're going to be excavating, we have to over excavate so we can get our formwork in for our foundation. But if you look directly up, we are within what they call the drip line of this tree, meaning that the branches are overhanging where the outside of this house will be. So realistically, there may be some additional pruning there, but what's important to note is that when we protect this tree, after we let me go back to the air spading, they're going to be cutting that root system close to where our excavation line is. And the reason that's important is that rather than the excavator coming in here and grabbing a bucket of soil and ripping the root system, they've now air spaded and clean cut those roots to protect the roots and make sure that that root has a chance to continue to live and grow. Now, secondly, they're going to be putting a temporary fence around this tree and the two King Crimsons. And that fence, ideally, we started the conversation where he's like, well, how much room can you give me? And I said, well, I would rather turn that around to you and say, well, how much room do you need? Because what I would rather do is I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to save this tree. If I tell you I need 15 feet and 5 years from now that tree dies because we took 15 feet, that's just unfair. We're not we're not investing the opportunity correctly. So instead, he said that he needed to basically have that fence underneath the drip line. So the drip line we just talked about is actually over the future home. So what we discussed is, well, this section that is really close to the tree is actually the furthest point out on this house, and it's a really short section. So the reality is we don't actually have to run our excavator back and forth. We can kind of set up on the left, set up on the right, and dig accordingly. And we're gonna give ourselves a 5-foot buffer, and then we're gonna have that temporary fence. Now that's a tight area, but it still gives us enough room to get in here with ladders, to work on, whether we're putting windows in, siding in, set up staging. It gives us enough area, especially once we're backfilled. That temporary fence will go all the way around, like I said, ideally as close to the drip line as possible, and that area is off limits. Like I said, they're gonna air spade everything, expose the root system, and then they're gonna fill that area with mulch. The reason that they're gonna fill it with mulch is because we want that tree to make sure it maintains moisture. One thing we could do is if we need to add water, we could. Doesn't really sound like we're going to need to. We're gonna fill that area with mulch, but nothing can be in that zone. There's gonna be signs all the way around. You can't walk on it, you can't store material, you can't park there, you can't eat. He even said you can't eat lunch under it, which I laughed because I think about it all the times on a construction site. When you want to get into a nice shady spot, you kind of park yourself up against the tree. But these are going to be off limits. Same thing with the 2 King Crimsons. We're going to do the same thing with the fence, go all the way around it. Let's take a walk over there because I want to show you kind of how that is impacted by the driveway. Now, this is So this is important. So next step for us is we're actually going to have the surveyor come out and outline the front facade of the house so we can get that accurate 5-foot buffer in that section to make sure that they're putting the fence, because he said once the fence is in, it can't come out until construction's over. So we want to make sure we do that right. From there, once the fence is in, then we're clear to demo, and we just want to make sure that we're setting up specific spots on the job site for parking, for our trades, for our job site office, for material lay down. All of those things need to be considered, but right now the most important thing, and this is what I said, is the most important thing is protecting these trees. So let's work within that understanding, is that we will protect these trees at all costs, and we will work our job site around that. Now, it's a beautiful acre-plus site. We have plenty of room. We work in the city, so tight constraints aren't something that we're super worried about. Yes, we want as much room as possible, but at the end of the day, it's the most important thing here is that these trees survive, like I said, not only construction, but for a really long time beyond, because we're saving them to make the front of the house really beautiful. So this one right here, we can be right around our drip line. Our driveway actually kind of is designed to loop around this tree and almost follow the arc of this tree, and then we get back there, you can kind of see some of the stakes that we staked out with Steve Teak when he was out on site. And our first driveway is over there, and our 2-car garage is to the right there. So this tree, as well as the one way over there, we don't really have that many concerns with it getting close to construction. We can work around that, and then when we go to do our final driveway, we'll probably do some pruning if necessary, and then pull that fence out of here, and we will pave the driveway back into the garage. The last thing I want to talk about is this tree line. So this tree line, we don't have anything specific necessarily as far as protecting them for the silver maples. However, we did talk about the fact that, number one, we're going to be setting a construction fence up along the entire fence for aesthetics, so it's a nice streetscape, so we're keeping the street side nice looking. It doesn't look like a constant construction site for the next X amount of months. But then this side here, we're going to actually run like a snow fence, or like that orange plastic fence on stakes all the way down, just really indicating that, hey, listen, this is not an area for material, this is not an area that you can park, that you can store anything. We want to protect these trees. That is really the point of today's meeting, was to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect what is here, so when we build a new house and we are done with construction, the house looks like it's always been here, which is exactly our intent. And with these big, beautiful trees, the only other way to do that would be to transport in these really mature trees, but we have the benefit of having them on site already. Guys, stay tuned for another episode of the NS Builders Podcast next week, as well as an episode of Revealed. We will see you then.